Hey guys, it's Black Sweatshirt Marco, a rare variant of Black T-shirt Marco, who's just as much of a minimalist, but slightly more textured. And today we're talking about something that affects the vast majority of working adults, and that is debt. You see, average household debt in Australia has hit all-time highs, with the average household owing almost $250,000, and my partner and I owe almost $338,000 of debt ourselves. So this is an issue that affects a lot of people. However, not all debt is the same. So first we're going to talk about different types of debt and why you may or may not want to pay them off, and then we're going to jump into some strategies to pay debt off as quickly as possible. See, the first thing you have to understand is that you can think about debt in two broad camps: good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt that allows you to make more money, for example, using a mortgage to buy an investment property with a positive cash flow. However, bad debt is debt that just costs you money without adding anything to your wealth, for example, credit card loans or personal loans. To figure out if it's good or bad debt, you could also look at the interest rate. Debts with very low interest rates are usually considered good debts because you'd be better off investing money in the stock market rather than paying those loans back. For example, in Australia, the interest charged on our student loans is just whatever inflation was that year. So for the last few years, that's averaged about 1.8%. So instead of using money to pay back my student loans, I'd rather just put that money in the stock market where I could earn 8 to 10% a year, or even just put it in a regular savings account where I'm currently earning about 3% per year. So if you've got really low interest rate debt, lower than about 4 or 5%, you might actually not want to pay that debt down as quickly as you can, but rather invest the money somewhere else where you could be earning more. However, it's important to understand that even good debt can become bad debt if you suddenly can't afford it anymore. For example, interest rates are very low at the moment, so if you just purchased a home with a very low rate mortgage and you borrowed as much as the bank would let you, then as soon as interest rates go back up again, you may not be able to afford those repayments anymore, and then it's become bad debt. So even if you've got good debt, depending on how confident you are in your ability to be able to continue to pay that back if interest rates go up, or if you lose your job, you may still want to consider paying that down to a more tolerable risk level. So once you've decided which of your debts you want to pay back and which you might want to leave for the time being, it's time to move on to trying to pay those back as quickly as possible. Before you try to attack your debt, you need to get organized. First, list all of the different debts you might have, along with their interest rates and their minimum monthly payments. It can be scary to see it all written down in one place, but you can take comfort in the knowledge that this is the worst it's ever going to get, and things are only going to get better from here. Once you've got all your debts written down, it's time to move on to the next step, and that is consolidation. If you've got debts on multiple different credit cards, you might be able to consolidate that into just one card, which has several different benefits. Firstly, it means instead of dealing with 4 or 5 different payments each month, you've only got one to worry about, and it's all in the one spot. Secondly, it means you might be able to save on credit card fees, because instead of paying for 4 or 5 different cards, you're now only paying for one, and you can close all the rest. Third, you can probably save a lot of money on interest, and that's because a lot of banks offer something called a 0% balance transfer. What this means is that for a period of 12 or 18 months, you're not paying any interest on credit card debt that you've transferred from your other cards onto this one card. Depending on how much credit card debt you have, this might be able to save you thousands of dollars alone. But remember that it's not free. There are usually still fees attached, maybe in the form of fixed fees, or it might be a 3 to 5% balance transfer fee. But this is still usually far cheaper than continuing to pay credit card debt at 20% interest or more. Alternatively, if you're not eligible for one of these types of cards, you might be able to get a personal loan and use that to pay off your credit card debt. Of course, personal loans can have a wide range of interest rates, so this only makes sense if you have a lower interest rate on your personal loans than on your credit cards. In order to keep the interest rate on these personal loans low, you might want to look at getting a secured loan. This is a loan that's secured against some sort of valuable asset, such as a car that you might have, and they usually have much lower interest rates than unsecured loans. Once you've consolidated as many loans as you can also look at refinancing other loans that you might have. For example, if you have a mortgage and you haven't refinanced it in several years, now might be a good time to have a look at that because interest rates are at all-time lows. Refinancing a mortgage takes much more effort than the things I've mentioned previously, but a mortgage broker would be able to tell you whether it's worthwhile or not, and in many cases, you might be able to save thousands of dollars a year just by doing that. Now, once you've gotten all of your interest rates as low as possible, it's time to set up a budget and work out exactly how much extra you can afford to pay each month. I've already made a video that goes into setting up a budget, and I'm sure I'll make more in the future, so just check out my channel for videos on how to set up a budget. Now, if you've set up your budget and realize that you don't have enough left over to pay off your debt as quickly as you'd like, you might want to consider cutting some of your expenses. Everything that isn't strictly necessary for your continued survival should be reevaluated, and you should ask yourself, is this thing more valuable than having the freedom of being debt-free just a little bit sooner? In many cases, the answer would be yes, it is actually worthwhile, and in that case, you might want to keep that thing. But other things that aren't adding value to your life might be stripped away, and you can use that money to pay off your debt sooner. For example, maybe you have a gym membership that's costing you $100 a month, but you realize that you might be just as happy going for a run outside every day instead of going to the gym. In that case, cancel your gym membership and use that money to pay off your debt. Alternatively, you might have a Netflix subscription, but you might think that the entertainment and relaxation value of having a Netflix account is worth more than being able to throw an extra $16 a month towards your debt. These choices are going to be highly individual, so it's not up to me to tell you what you should cut out and what you should keep, but it is very important to carefully consider these things and look at what you might want to cut out in order to improve your financial future. If you've already cut out everything you can, or if you decide there isn't anything that's worth cutting in your budget, you might also want to look at increasing your income. Now, this is obviously easier said than done, but there are a lot of different avenues you could explore here. You could try negotiating a raise at your job, or you could try picking up some overtime if that's an option. You could also look at starting something on the side, whether it's another part-time job in the evenings or on the weekends, or potentially starting your own side hustle. Once again, this is all going to be very unique to your situation, but there might be a lot of different options you could explore, and I'll be making some more videos delving further into these in the future. Now, it's finally time to start paying off your different debts, and there are two strategies that are the most popular here. The first is called the debt snowball, and it was popularized by a guy called Ramsey. Essentially, what the debt snowball tells you to do is to line up all of your debts in order of the smallest debt to the largest debt, and start paying them off in that order. This means you might be able to pay off your first debt relatively quickly, which gives you the satisfaction of having paid something off, and also leaves you with more money left over at the end of each month to go and attack your next debt. Once you finish paying off the second debt, all the money you were throwing at that one then goes to attacking the third one, and then the fourth one, and so on until you've paid off all of your debts. Now, this method works well if you need a bit of psychological encouragement to get you to pay off all of your debts, because you start with the smallest goal and prove to yourself that you can do it before working yourself up to your bigger goals. However, if you're really serious about paying your debt off as quickly as possible, this method is not ideal. If you want to pay off your debt as quickly as you possibly can, the mathematically optimal solution is called the debt avalanche. I won't. With the debt avalanche technique, you list all of your debts not in order of smallest to largest, but from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. Paying off your high interest rate debts first means that every extra dollar you put towards paying off your debts is saving you the most amount of money possible, and mathematically it means you'll pay off your debts faster than anything else. It might take a little bit longer to pay off your first debt if your highest interest rate debt happens to be one of your larger ones, but it means that overall you're going to be debt-free much sooner than with the snowball method. So if you believe that you can keep on motivating yourself to make those extra payments every month, then the debt avalanche is by far superior. However, if you think you might need a little bit of a psychological boost when it comes to paying off your debt, you might want to consider the debt snowball instead. In the end, the most important thing is that you manage to pay off your debts one way or another, because you're going to be in a better financial situation if you get rid of those bad debts. Additionally, while both of these methods are sort of rules of thumb, you might want to consider individual exceptions for some types of debt. For example, you might have a debt to a family member, which might not cost you a lot in interest, but you might feel bad about taking too long to repay them, so this might reach the top of your list rather than either your smallest debt or your highest interest rate debt. Additionally, if you couldn't consolidate all of your credit cards and you still have a few open, you might want to look at when the annual fee is due on each of those cards. Even though your debt on a particular credit card might not be your smallest debt or have the highest interest rate, you might want to consider paying it off first if it has a large annual fee that's going to be due soon. This way you can pay off the credit card and close it before you have to pay the annual fee again. When you've finally managed to pay off all of your bad debts, it's really important to make sure that you have your financial foundations in place so that you can avoid ever having to go into bad debt again in an emergency. This means setting up an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months expenses that you can tap into in the case of something unexpected coming up. After that, you can either look at paying off some of your debts which are ordinarily considered good debts if you don't feel secure enough in your ability to repay them, or you can start investing. I've already made a video introducing the stock market, and of course, as a finance channel, there are going to be tons more videos on investing in the future, so stay tuned for those. If you found this video helpful, feel free to give it a like and subscribe so that you catch all of my future content on personal finance and investing. Thanks, guys.